Don't let people use you. If you let people use you, they will use you up. They will use you and convince you that you wanted to be used. Don't let people take advantage of you, okay? And people who let other people use them, they tend to not have a sense of self worth. They tend to not have a sense of self value. They tend to not be able to get over the things that happen to them in life. When I say don't let people use you, don't just fold over in order to be loved or to be accepted, or you feel like you're trying to get towards a certain goal and just let people show up. The people that are showing up here are people that are actually preventing you from being able to do what you need to do in order to get to where it is that you're trying to go. But how it's showing up is it's showing up like controlling people. Like if you've ever had a parental person, or you've ever had a significant other, or even in community and collective, if you've ever felt like there was an expectation of this is who I should be, like we all kind of bought into this is who we should have been. But yeah, sure. But you got to be mindful of the people that you have around you. Because look, sometimes in life, things just don't work out. Okay? They just don't work out. And you got to take what you got. Like, let me say it like this. If you've ever been entrepreneurial, if you've ever just put yourself out there in something, sometimes you'll put 100% into something and you'll lose 70% of it, okay? And I'm not saying that in a risky way. I'm saying that in like say you wanted to date somebody and then you wasted your time with that person. You put 100% into something and then maybe you got 30% back, which was just the wisdom. You feel like, oh, okay, that was a waste of time. But there's that feeling of like being stuck. Like, oh, why did I waste all my time in that area? And then you might try to lie to yourself and say like, oh yeah, but it was worth the wisdom. I needed the pain in order to grow. And no. It is your choice to learn something from the things that you've experienced. Don't waste a tough experience by not learning anything from it. But it's not a necessity for your growth and your wisdom. But don't be hard-headed. Don't be in a situation where you let people use you. And you know better. You know better. This is like the type of people where they're super nice and then they hang out with very seedy people, very questionable people. And what they like about those people is that those people make them feel protected. Maybe they always wanted to speak up and they like that the people speak up. There's a difference between having boundaries and speaking up and someone just being like rude and ruthless. So here it is, that nice person just allows themselves to be used by someone who they don't even know any more than the other person. Just just wreaking havoc, just all over the place. Don't you can't be in a situation where if things don't turn out, you blame somebody else. You got the power. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that at all. You have the power. And the power also is the permission that you can leave. That you do not have to stay. That there's it's better out there. Again, the way that these messages come across is they come across multiple ways. Like, obviously, multiple people will watch and multiple people will have different things going on. We're not just all having the same thing going on. But the way that the message is coming across for you will make sense to you. That's how it works. Okay, that's how collective read happens. Anyway, I'm just saying, you don't got to stay if you don't want to stay. And when we think of the lovers, of course, we're thinking of romance and love and all that stuff. But I look at it more of like genuine, authentic love. And we love various ways. In society, we like to just focus on the like Oh, big love from my significant other. But we love in multiple ways: the love of children, the love of parents, the love of siblings, the love of friends, the love of community, like all kinds of different loves that are important. And we kind of hyper focus on just one thing. But what I'm saying is, though, there are certain areas where you got to leave, like you got to step out. You're being used in some area that you would hope would be a more supportive area, but you got to know there's other stuff out there. Okay. There's other stuff out there. Other stuff definitely out here. And also, there's also this sense of not blocking your blessings. Sometimes when you go through things emotionally, you will shut off. Like you'll just be like, I'm over it. If I don't have to think about it, I'm not gonna think about it at all. I'm over it. So it's almost like floodgates or over it. Like everything is invited into the space or nothing is invited into the space. And I say you need to have translucent boundaries. Okay, make it a membrane where there's certain things you will let in and certain things you will not let in. And that is your job, to figure out what is important to let in and what's not. If you feel like you're constantly being used by people, if you feel like you're constantly being overwhelmed by people, if you feel like that's the kind of stuff that comes up, then this might be important for you to learn how to utilize and do this thing. Because there is an ability for you to figure out how to nurture that sense of security. It's an internal conflict currently, but you have that within you to figure it out. Okay? You have it within you to remove this sense of overthinking certain situations that have nothing to do with you. Okay? When people use other people, they make them feel responsible for another person's action. You made me do this. Well, when you did this thing, it made me dot. You do not have to engage or participate. Again, there are certain situations where it's like, look, if that's a family member and y'all live together, okay, well, you need to figure out what the next 5 or 10 years is going to be and figure out how that's going to shift or change. If it's a significant other, you also need to figure out the next 5 or 10 years of how that's going. If it's friendships and things like that, you don't even need 5 to 10 years. You need to figure out the next 1 to 3 years of like if this is viable. As long as you're not using people as well, people aren't allowed to be in your energy. They don't deserve your energy if the energy is off. And using people, like I said, is not always someone is mean and menacing. A lot of times people, like I said, are lacking a sense of purpose, a sense of identity, a sense of self-understanding. And so they themselves will kind of put it on other people. Now, if two people are like that, it's just going to ping pong, going back and forth, do. But as soon as somebody realizes that and they break that, that means that it's not just the other person who's responsible. It means the person themselves are responsible. I'm not going to allow this or that. I'm not going to allow dot. Things will shift. First thing is the person who is no longer able to use you, they're going to get real pissed off because they're going to want you to continue to be in those dynamics. The second thing is you have to kind of change everything. You have to move all of this energy. And if you built a life long enough that many things are upholding that kind of structure in your life, it's going to be tough. You're going to have to wash it out, and there's going to be moments of feeling alone or feeling like, because people are going to try to guilt you. That's what they do. They'll try to guilt you to come back and blah blah blah, whatever. Yeah, and you might go back. But if you find a way to not, then you build the next. What do you actually need? Who do you actually need to be around? How do you actually not want to be used? This can come up in a work environment too. where you see your value as how you contribute. So you overwork, and everybody knows in work. Okay. There's a reason. I'm going to give you the reason in a second. But everybody knows in work that the harder you work, the harder your job is going to be. Do your job, but don't do anything more than that. Okay. Because the longer it takes you to do something, the quicker someone else does something, they're going to be given more things. But that doesn't always mean that people are going to get that. They try to convince you that you're going to get like, oh, if you work really hard, you're going to get internally promoted. And then it's like, they do that like 10 or 20% of the time. 90% of the time, they're still going to hire somebody outside. There's almost like incentives to get better pay and better benefits to leave a company, go somewhere else, and then come back to that company. So that's that. The reason, though, why I'm saying, like, okay, don't do more than you need to, don't be used, especially if you show up as a certain, you may look a certain way and people may expect you to perform a certain way. Don't make me have to say the systemic stuff that I want to say, okay? So, don't let people use you. And the reason why people don't work as hard as they did at jobs and stuff like that is not because I'm saying don't work hard. It's because, okay, I'm gonna give you this little history lesson real fast, and just bear with me. Back in the 80s, like prior to the Reagan administration within the US, but of course all of these like systems are interconnected. Anyway, before the Reagan administration, jobs or companies, they really focused on making sure the quality of the employee was well. I'm not saying that all the situations were like hazard free or something like that, but it was a time where there could be a one income household. Of course, there is still poverty in different areas, and then of course we can look at how this impacted other parts of the world. Okay, just stick with me, okay? But what happens in the Reagan era is they wanted to take all of that expectation off of corporations. Why did that happen? Prior to that, when the silent generation started to protest for better treatment, so we're thinking of the Industrial Revolution now, they're protesting for better treatment. We get these, child labor laws. We get all of these things where it's just like, hey, y'all had the monopolies. Remember, the monopolies is important. Y'all had the monopolies, but not anymore. And so then you saw the rise of unions, and so much so that there were certain industries like steel and other industries that were heavily impacted by unions, to the point where it was too expensive to hire the labor in order to do this or that. So so fast forward into the future, companies felt like, hey, we do not want to piss these employees off. Okay, we don't want to piss them off at all. So there was opportunities. There was I don't want to get too much into that. I was going to talk about the Great Migration, but I'm going to say this: the people migrated, and the Great Migration is a specific thing, but people migrated to different areas for different opportunities. Okay, because it was a time as things were building that you could get a good income as a skilled laborer, or as this or that, and da 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 da. Okay. Now, that's how businesses were treating people. Then we also had the Social Security system that started as well. So that meant that the whole goal was that no old person would have to fall into poverty and da da da. So all of that. And the jobs at that time still had pensions. So prior to the 401k, it was the job's responsibility to put money to the side, and people worked at these companies for a long time. We're going to fast forward into the future, okay? So during the Reagan administration, what ends up happening is that they want the government to not be so restrictive on these companies. And what the companies did was, obviously, that's where the Make America Great comes from anyway. But what ends up happening is that during that time, there's a lot of pro-business stuff, which negatively impacts everybody. But what it does to corporations or corporate structures is it turns that corporate structure, instead of focusing on the employee, so making sure that they have like wages, making sure that they're developing their talent, making sure this and that, what they did is they started to reinvest it back into the company. Also, the owners are making more money, but they did something called a stock buyback. The stock buyback was they're inflating the evaluation of that particular company in order to make it look bigger. There's a really good example of this on the TV show The Gilded Age. If you go and watch that, where he is owning a railroad line and they try to short his company, so he just goes back and puts tons of money in it so that they lose money and blah blah blah. So that's like a good example of what it. So basically what ends up happening is that the money stops trickling to the employees. It goes back into the company, and it makes the company look bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Also, the pension is no longer looked at as a requirement because of the 401k. I know y'all are like, what does this have to do with the tarot? Just follow me here. The 401k then replaces the pension, so it puts the onus on the individual to save for their retirement as opposed to the company. So that whole changed. Then fast forward into the future, we get internet, and then we get, technology, and like big technology boom, and a lot more money is created. And so now we see this kind of monopoly system that is happening again. And that's why workers don't work. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it this long. That's why workers don't work that hard, because they're not rewarded in the same way. To bring it back to the original point here, do your job, but don't do an ounce more, because it's not the same infrastructure that it was before, whatever. But also, don't allow people to use you. Different aspects of your life, relationship, life, work is what I meant to say, community. Don't, even when you look at yourself, have a healthy relationship with the things that are good for you. What you're eating, what you're doing for physical exercise stuff. I know this stuff seems like, who cares? But it helps you. It helps you to be able to make sound decisions. It helps you to be able to process the world going on around you. Look, I used to talk so much about nutrition, right? And I would be like, oh yeah, you gotta pay attention to nutrition. One ear out the other. It's like, because people look at nutrition through the lens of aesthetics, of what you look like. Okay, whatever. But can you imagine trying to make a sound decision if you have some imbalance going on inside of you? And I'm not saying it like I'm about to sell you some supplements. I'm not saying that at all. I'm like, there's many things, because of how our modern day diet is, that makes it hard for our internal system to process things. So how are we going to have good discernment on love, on career, on, healing ourselves? How are we going to do that? It's going to be easy to be used by others. Okay, so let me just wrap this all up and bring it back. Don't let other people use you. You have the power within you to make different decisions, and also understand that nothing's, for the most part, is just happening to one person. It doesn't really happen in a vacuum, and history is very cyclical as well. So I don't know, it just makes me feel better to know, like, oh, okay, people been doing this for a while. So don't feel bad if your love life is not where you want it to be, or your finances aren't, or your health is not, or even your mental health is not where you want it to be. It doesn't mean it can't get there. Okay, I'll see you next time.